Time to talk some business, and in times where we're having outcries from government and individuals within our country that we do not have enough money, that our economy is under strain, and also the fact that we don't have an identification base to actually identify the individuals that are all around this country. Are we getting enough revenue? Are we getting enough taxation? And the question today is, should we or should we not be taxing churches? So this morning, joining me in the studio is Mr. Sidney Casely-Hayford. He's a financial analyst. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
And also Honorable James Aveji-Kluche, Chairman of the Parliamentary Select Committee on Finance. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
How are you both doing?
We're doing well. I know you are doing well.
You're speaking for both of us. He's doing well. I'm struggling.
You're struggling.
Yes.
Anyway, is that in regards to your own personal issues, or is it the economy that's making struggle at the moment?
I don't know whether I can divorce the two, but I'm trying to work in an economic environment that is clearly not easy.
Definitely.
So things are rough.
Okay.
Things are tough.
First things first. Do you believe that we should be taxing churches?
It's probably too general a question.
Right.
I think that traditionally matters to do with church business, direct church business, are clearly separated from other business that the church engages itself in. So that if somebody comes to pay their tithes, or comes to make a donation, or comes to make some kind of a contribution towards some church activity, I believe that kind of funding, being a spiritual and philanthropic issue, is probably excluded from other things else.
Right.
Where the church engages in publishing books, tapes, CDs, setting up a university for private income purposes, for profit-making purposes, that sort of activity, which even though it is under the umbrella of the church, I make a clear distinction between that kind of activity and that kind of revenue, that kind of profit, and the separate spiritual upgiving elements that I know the church is really set up to do.
Right. Honourable, let me ask you the same question. I mean, first things, I know, obviously he's established the fact that it is a very generalized question, but what's your first opinion on this?
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much. I think that we need to, first of all, look at the position of the law. What does the law say? Casely tried to talk about it, that those businesses that are purely from the church activity, which churches undertake, must attract tax. Now, if you look at the income tax law of 2000, Act 592, the first section talk about imposition of tax. And if you allow me, I'll quote only the first one.
Please go ahead.
A person who has chargeable income shall pay tax, subject to this act, for each year of assessment. Now, the law mentioned a year of assessment and a chargeable income. So we need to find out what is a chargeable income and what is a year of assessment.
Right.
Now, if you go on to section 5 of the law, it defines what a chargeable income is. It says, subject to this act, the chargeable income of a person for a year of assessment is a total of that person's assessable income. So it has mentioned another thing, accessible income.
Yeah.
So we have a chargeable income, we have a year of assessment, the accessible income. Now let's go and define the accessible income. Then we'll get a thing clear.
Sure.
Subject to this act, accessible income of a person for a year of assessment from any business, employment, or investment is, one, in the case of a resident person, people who live in this country.
Yeah.
In the case of a resident person, is a full amount of person's income from business, employment, or investment accrued in, derived from, brought into, or received in Ghana. So 4.
Okay.
The income is accruing in Ghana. The income is brought into Ghana.
Yes.
The income is derived in Ghana. The income is received in Ghana.
Okay.
All these must attract tax.
So why are we not taxing them? Because obviously it's there.
Yeah, let me go on. But there are sections of Ghanaians or organizations that are exempt from the payment of taxation. And one of them included, you go to section 10, it said exempt income. Now all this income by section 1 of the law and section 5 must be taxed. But section 10 said those incomes, some of them are exempt. What are they? The salary and allowances and pension and gratuity of the president is exempt. 2, the income of a local authority other than income from activities which are only indirectly connected with the local authority.
Right.
3, the income of a statutory or registered building society or statutory or registered friendly society other than income from business carrying on by that society. And then 4, that is what the churches come in. Income accruing to or derived by an exempt organization other than income from business.
Okay.
The exempt organization, you can get that one in section 94 of the law.
Okay, which religious
bodies with a national character, a charitable organization. So if a church is into pure business, profit from that business must attract tax.
Yeah.
But the activities of the church, that of national character, that of charitable character, are exempt. That is the position of the law.
That's understandable. Okay, so for instance, we have people who are collecting salaries under the church auspices. A deacon can be collecting his salary. The treasurer, by all means, once he's finished doing his, will collect his as well. Those are taxable incomes.
Yeah, those people will be taxed on what they received.
Yes.
It becomes an income to them. If I'm a catechist and I'm paid, whether it's allowance or a salary or whatever, that is my income.
Different. The normal business of a church is very clear. All right, a church collects its money from tithes, a church collects its money from donations made by philanthropic individuals, etc., etc., etc. All of those items are church activity items, and they constitute your exempt items. But there are so many other things that churches do in this country which are clearly profit-making items,
right?
And
Now,
all
this
that
is where,
should be
this is where we're
taxed.
getting to. For instance, you said that we do get certain tax exemptions. Churches, religious bodies, charities, they do get certain tax exemptions as well, i.e. duty and other stuff as well. So if, for instance, a church has fundraised, they've all of a sudden imported a couple of vehicles, one of which will go to a certain individual, one will hopefully be used for the congregation, one might be an excavator, which will be used for
construction
business.
hiring out.
So where do we go? I mean, in situations like that where it's clear that the church is conducting business-orientated transactions,
Absolutely.
Where do we go from there? I mean, how do we actually identify that and make sure that they are taxed properly?
Yeah, I think that first of all, we have to determine whether that activity is constitute a business activity.
Right.
Once we determine that that activity is a business activity, whatever profit is made on that activity must attract tax. So the issue you're talking about is how do we determine that?
Right.
That is what I think that is the duty of the tax authorities, the Ghana Revenue Authority, to go and find out from each of these churches and say, well, we need to differentiate between what is a business activity of your operations and what is not. Then the tax is applied on the appropriate one. You said it, that if a church bought an excavator, not solely to use for the construction of a church building, but probably that will be hired out to somebody. Profit is made from that activity, and therefore must attract tax.
Yes.
If a church bought a bus, which is put between Adenta and Accra, Trotro, and they make business, it's a business activity, it must attract tax. That is what we are talking about. But where there's a church collection, every Sunday or there's a collection, that is purposely meant for the running of the church, which is a charitable organization of public character. That will not attract tax. That is the position of the law now. But if we think that church is becoming a business, well, one person said, I'm forming a church. What is my motive?
Okay.
Is my motive that I collect these Sunday collections and make profits? That is what we should look at, and then chase them. If there is the need for us to even tax them, we'll do that.
Now, is this the case right now? I mean, obviously, we have established that some people are using, using their charitable associations to profit from it. But how often are we actually seeing this point where churches are being approached and saying, well, no, you are actually using this for business, so therefore this should be taxed? Is it happening? Why?
Okay, let's backtrack a couple of things. I think a year or two ago, the finance minister actually proposed that we would start looking at profit ventures within the church,
yes,
and they would be taxed. I think that actually was tabled in Parliament. Parliament approved the budget, so Parliament tacitly approved that particular issue of taxing the profit-making ventures within the church. Then after that, the process should have been that we would go to the Ghana Revenue Authority. They would lay down the regulations of how it would be done. They would lay down the rules and how we should approach it. Come back to Parliament. Parliament will then look at it and say, yes, this is what we signed to. This is what we say should be done. And then it should have been implemented. Typically of everything in this country today, after it had actually been agreed that this is a good idea, nobody implements it. And it's still sitting on the table, and nobody has done anything about it. We've been through another budget cycle since then, or two, and we are still waiting to see this issue come forward so we can actually do it.
Honorable.
Now, if the IRS or the GRA does an excellent job, and some of these things are commonsensical, if any church comes to you and says, okay, we are going to buy an excavator so we can use it to build our church, you have to turn around and say, my friend, I don't think you know what you're talking about. An excavator is going to cost you a couple of million, and you want to invest a couple of million just to build a church. And then do it. Then what happens after that? By all means, there'll be some disposal of it. By all means, there'll be some hiring of it.
Yes.
So the IRS has to be a little bit more sharp and being a little firmer in determining that certain activities that are engaged in are purposely done to mislead, and you have to sort it out. Mr. Afeji is talking about if you take a coach and you say, okay, this coach is going to be for our church members. We'll be carrying our church members from, every Sunday and maybe once during the midweek from point A to point B. But then suddenly you find that the transport has now become a commercial vehicle and is running up and down. That particular activity must be taxed. And you need to lay it down very clearly. Look, we are primitive in the way we do a lot of things in this country. And you would think that sometimes we are not thinking clearly, or maybe it is too difficult and complicated for us to just simply sit down and provide the parameters for taxing all of these things. If you go to the US, you go to the UK, you go to Germany, you go to France, it is all laid out already. If we are too lazy to think through our own, let's go and borrow it from somewhere where some people have already sorted it out. In the US, you cannot run a church or run an organization, a foundation, an NGO or anything without going through a certain registration process, showing what your articles are, what your reasons are, and you must file a return of all your income and your expenditures annually. It is mandatory to the extent that if you don't do it and you are out of the time limit for filing it, you will be asked to stop the particular activity.
I mean, you're saying this. I mean, I've got here in 2010 in Germany they raised 9.2 billion euros from taxation from churches.
Absolutely.
And Honourable, I mean, we bring this back to you because we've spoken about where the status is with Parliament. Where are we going? Because obviously, two more budgets have been done. We still haven't seen light at the end of the tunnel.
First of all, I do not have the evidence to say GRA is not actually chasing the churches to pay taxes on their business activity. I don't have that information. So I may not fault them. But if they are not doing it, then we urge them to go after the churches to do that. So I look at the whole thing in two angles now. Those activities that are business in nature, the churches must pay tax on those activities. Therefore, GRA must chase them to do that.
But what about the parliamentary enforcement as well? Because obviously the bill is still there.
No, it is.
We're talking about the GRA, but it's still in front of Parliament.
No, it is not in front of Parliament. There is nothing in front of Parliament. Minister of Finance came to Parliament with the budget, and in the budget statement, they indicated that they are going to implement this activity. It is in consonant with the law.
Yes.
And therefore, Parliament approving that budget is approving what is the position of the law. The detailed work is left with the Ghana Revenue Authority to do that. It doesn't need to come Parliament again for approval. So there is nothing before Parliament in that regard. It is for them to go now. Churches are also supposed to file their returns.
They are supposed to file returns.
They are supposed to file returns by the law. So if they are not filing their returns, then Ghana Revenue Authority must go after them.
Yes.
And make sure that they file their returns. Whether they make profit, whether they undertake any business activity at all, they must file their returns.
And whilst we're on the subject of responsibility and doing your duty, let me just put this on the table. It is one thing saying the churches must file. I think we should also insist that the churches must file publicly. Not just file to the GRA.
Yep.
Let them publish their financials in the daily graphic, like we get the banks and all the rural banks and everybody else to do.
That would be interesting.
Let this make it public. There's no reason why we shouldn't. It's the law.
It's
They're supposed to file,
transparency.
and it's transparency.
Yep.
Number one. Number two, let me fault Parliament. Parliament has the power. They have the stick to summon the finance minister and say, listen, 2 years ago, you came to us and said you were going to actually implement taxation on churches on profit that they make. Up until now, we have not seen this. What is going on? Please come and explain to this august body exactly what it is that you are doing. Because we gave you approval to do this. We accepted. You came to us and says, could you please stamp this for me because I want to do it. 2 years later, you have not done it. What are you doing? And I think this parliamentary oversight is missing in many, many things. The only time we get this kind of summoning is when it becomes a political issue, and where there are political marks to be gained, then somebody in Parliament is making noise that somebody should come and present in front of them. But the things that are supposed to generate revenue, the issues that are supposed to bring us some kind of a procedure that we can follow, are decentralization issues. We're not calling people to book. Local government should by now be whipped consistently because it's long overdue. We haven't implemented decentralization since 1993 when the law was passed. We're still struggling with it. And now that we are sitting down and the Minister of Finance is saying that we have challenges, all right, with our revenue mobilization and with our cash, this is the time for them to start thinking how they can get all of these things in place rather than thinking about how they can increase petrol pump prices and increase utility prices, which are not necessary.
You said it is the GRA's task at this moment to actually enforce this, but if the GRA isn't doing their job, then who is it to push them to do so?
That's a good question. Who is to push GRA? Kesley said it, that it is the duty of Parliament, and it's even faulting Parliament. I will disagree with him. Apart from the Public Accounts Committee and the Appointment Committee, that whole public hearing, all other committees do not. So you cannot completely conclude that we don't do it. I'm the chairman of the Finance Committee, and I work with the Minister of Finance all the time. There are a lot of things that we do with the ministry. There are a lot of proposals we made to them for them to take actions in terms of the revenue collection, which are not public because we don't hold public hearing. So you don't fault us completely on that.
Yes, but you see, our president, I won't say your president because I don't want to be partisan. Our president promised us an era of transparency and openness in governance. Okay, so even if the law does not say, okay, that the Public Accounts Committee, these are the visible ones to the public, why can't the finance committees and some of these committees put out some of the less sensitive thing? We don't say we should want to see everything, but there are less sensitive issues, but issues that can be tabled that will force the various institutions to actually do their job. Parliament should voluntarily put it out and say, we have had a discussion and a debate on this issue. This is our conclusion. This is our recommendation. So that we, the people, will know that the institutional heads who are supposed to be providing us with social services are not doing their job. Because right now, I'm sitting here and I'm faulting Parliament. You are saying to me, don't fault Parliament.
I'm happy with that recommendation. If that should be that recommendation that Public Finance Committee should also hold public hearing.
Yes.
Where we can call on GTV to come and air it. I'll be very happy about that. So that people can even see clearly what we go through as committee in assessing and analyzing all our...
It would be great, because I think that's one of the major issues that plagues the everyday Ghanaian. We're being told stuff that, yes, this is what we're doing. We're not being shown. Everything seems to be, under the carpet or behind the backs. And I think that's where we're falling short in regards to the transparency angle of things. Last thing, because this is going to be an ongoing topic, an ongoing discussion that we're going to be having on the show, so keep that in mind. Now, certain men of God have said that the church is already paying taxes in areas such as the taxation of staff and ministers on the pay-as-you-earn income, 8% withholding tax on rent, 10% on professional services, 5% on purchases of items and construction charges. What's your final take?
But that is not the 25% corporate tax we are talking about.
I just wanted your take on it. It's not me.
Yes,
I'm not a man.
yeah, because they are saying it. These are various taxes. And you're saying that if you make profit on your business activity, pay 25% on your profit. And it's not covered by what they are talking about. So if they make any business activity, they must pay the 25% profit on it.
All right. Last comments from you, sir.
I couldn't even add any more to what Mr. Feji has said. This is the crux of the problem.
Yeah.
What I think is disingenuous is that church leaders of that, whoever said that, should come to public to come and try and make us think that they are doing their share when he knows that he's not doing his share. They withdraw his pastoral license.
When a religious leader tries to take another angle, then you have to ask your questions.
Yes.
Already. But thank you ever so much for joining us. We've had Mr. Sidney Casely Hayford and Honorable James Afeji Kluche, Chairman of the Parliamentary Select Committee of Finance. Thank you ever so much for joining me this morning.